Welcome to the IonaHoops.com podcast with your host, Guy Flatico.
What's up, Gale Nation? It's Season 5, Episode 16 of the IonaHoops.com podcast, and welcome back. #Ledge Life. Just an erratic season continues, and we're going to talk all about that. Got a little different vibe to this episode. This is more of a quickie one. I haven't been going with the longer, more detailed ones because, well, quite frankly, listenership is down, and you guys haven't deserved it. So you get what you get, and you don't get upset, as the cliche goes. Anyway, we'll talk all about that. Let's get right into it right now. Where are the Gales right now? Where are we looking? Well, we are now nestled into sole possession of 6th place. Again, why is that important? Only 10 of the 13 teams in the MAC make it to Atlantic City. And, of course, the top 6 have the advantage of not having to play in the play-in game or pig round, as we've called it here in MAC circles for years. You play one less game if you are in the top 6. So it's important to finish there. Over the last couple episodes, I've cited threads of optimism showing that we can get there. We still can. There's still a path to that. We're not in dire straits by any means, but we have work to do. Gave one away, but we've maybe stole one back too as well. So looking at these last 4 games that we've played, I think is the best way to go about it. I describe them as we entered our final stretch. Coming out of the stretch that I said we were going to do really well, we did do really well. By the way, we won 4 or 5 of the games that I really thought were going to trigger our return to glory, if you will, or at least glory for this season. And then the schedule is going to get tougher. And I described, if you guys saw the thread on the Iona message board, I described the game at Mount as kind of a swing game. It's a game would be great to have. It's not certainly a lock or anything, and we got that. Then I described the game at Marist as a game we'll probably lose. Then we won that. Then I described the game from this past Friday, home against Riders, a game we'll probably win. And we lost that. Go figure. And then we get to, the game yesterday at Quinnipiac. Quinny was favored by about a touchdown, and we lost by 5. It was a good game. We played well. We were shorthanded in the game. Yafet Mundi missed the game with the flu. And we also haven't had Jalen Barr the last couple of games, so a little smaller on the rotation, having to go a little bit deeper into the bench at times as well. Maybe guys playing a few more minutes than they normally would, which, of course, impacts us on the defensive end, given the energy we exert on that end of the floor. But again, where are we? We're not in a bad spot with 5 games remaining to go, but we've got work to do. Looking at the standings right now, Quinnipiac in first place, sole possession at 12-3. And if they're the best team, we lost by 2 at home, by 5 at their place. And then look at the second place team, it's Marist. We lost by 2, 3, I think, at home, or 5 or whatever. And then we won at their place. These are the best teams in the league, and we obviously went toe to toe with them. So there should be no one in the league that we fear, except ourselves, maybe, just finding that consistency to perform at the level that we're capable of. The Merrimack is in third. We haven't played them yet. That's coming up. Big one coming up on Sunday. And it's the only meeting we have with them. We don't have to go to their place. Probably the luckiest thing we have is that we haven't had to play at Merrimack. So we have that game coming up Sunday, but before that, we have a bigger one, and I'll get to that in a second. The teams tied for 4th and 5th right now are Mount St. Mary's and Manhattan. We had only the one meeting with Mount. We did not host them this year, but we won at their place. So that was great trade-off of having to play at Mount instead of at Merrimack. Although there's only 2.5 games separating those 2 teams in the standings right now. And of course, Manhattan is now nudged ahead of us by half a game, and of course they throttled us in Riverdale not too long ago. So that is Friday night's game. So we have some big games, and we have them at home. Friday, home against Manhattan. Sunday, home against Merrimack. And then we hit the road for Buffalo. We against 2 teams that we quite frankly should beat, teams near the bottom of the standings. Just looking through the rest of the standings at the moment, Sacred Heart is at 7-7, so they're just a half game behind us in 7th place. Of course, they beat us into the ground too. And then Sienna's at 7-8. We did sweep them, so we have a tiebreaker edge with them. There's Ryder at 6-9. There's Niagara at 5-9. Those are right now your top 10 in the league. interesting. Because again, the bottom three, the ones that don't make it, that's Fairfield, St. Peter's, and Canisius. Fairfield's 5-10, St. Peter's 4-10, Canisius 2-12. Canisius, of course, not eliminated yet, but they're soon to be, I'm sure, from getting into that top 10. The rest, it's pretty tight. I mean, quite frankly, if if Fairfield at 5-10 is still only a game out of being eligible for AC. So it's standings are kind of bunchy here and there, but there's a lot of tiebreakers in play, and Iona's done some good things with tiebreakers. Getting swept by Quinnipiac was not one of them. It'd be nice if Marist overtakes them, since we did beat Marist. And again, that game against Merrimack is going to be huge. So those are games you have to win. They're all huge at this point, let's face it. But again, the final 5 games, home versus Manhattan, in a huge, huge game, especially given how they handled us last time. Then home against Merrimack. That's this weekend coming up, next weekend. Then we're in Buffalo the following weekend, Niagara and Canisius games. Again, 2 teams that are not very good. We should be able to win both games. But life in the MAC, you're on the road. You never know what's going to happen, but you got to win those games if you're Iona. And then wrapping up the season, home versus Sacred Heart, maybe a little payback there coming as well. So the road is not impossible by any means, but 3-2 gets you to 11-9. It should be enough for top 6. So I'll say that 4-1 would be even better, but 3-2 gets you to 11-9. So we'll see how that all pans out. Let's talk about these last few games that we haven't. Again, it's been up and down. We talked about the game at Mount, which was a great win, dramatic win, with Day Reeves hitting that 3 at the buzzer that was only surpassed by Fairfield's like 3/4 court shot about 2 minutes later, I think, there. So that was a great one. And then, again, you go to Marist. Marist was missing their starting center. Yes, we get it. They weren't full strength. But you know what? We went there. We out-toughed them after falling behind by double figures. And I think we all felt pretty good about that. Rider game, again, not a bad start. We're up by 9.5. We weren't playing great, but we were up by 9. And then it just felt like what happened in early, that whole, a lot of December and early January. I think there was a good 5 or 6 games where I felt like we had the lead, maybe even by double figures, then just went into an offensive funk that lasted several minutes, maybe midway through second half, and then the other, only to blow the lead, and then usually we had went on to lose the game. We had gotten a little better at that. We won a couple of those even after blowing it. And then we kind of got out of that for that 5-game stretch where we went 4-1. I'm sorry, a 7-game stretch, really, where we went 6-game stretch, I should say, and where we were playing better ball, and just that wasn't an issue. But it was an issue against Rider. That was a big step back, that one's going to hurt and sting. And if we don't make it to the top 6, we can probably point at that one at the moment. Although, again, you can point at any game. When you look at it. I mean, we lost at Fairfield, which is a team that might not make it to the top 3 at this point. So, you can't really, you can't just say, well, the Rider game cost us, but the Rider game cost us right now. All the games get magnified as you go on. So, and then, Quinnipiac yesterday, the game, without Yefet Mundi, we knew we were going to be in trouble on the glass. You guys have heard me on this podcast so many times. You have not heard me complain about refereeing. I'm not going to say the refs were awful against Quinnipiac. They weren't awful, but although anybody sitting near me might differ that I had that take, but they were pretty bad at stretches. And then Amari Monroe got those 2 Player of the Year type calls back to back. He traveled basically twice in a row. Neither one was called. He scored on both of them, and that swung the game. And that's what Quinnipiac needed to win that game. So be it. But we didn't play a bad game. We just, it was, does that happen on a neutral floor? Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't get both of those calls on a neutral floor. So, it happens. But now, all of a sudden, we're looking up at a 2-game losing streak. And we have 5 to go. We are capable of winning all 5. Again, 3-2 is probably enough. It is probably enough. 4-1, of course, would lock it in, I would say. And 4-1, I think, would make people feel better. He finished 12-8. It sounds a lot better than 11-9. So who knows? It's on the table for us to take. where do we go from here after this? I mean, this has been a pretty important stretch coming up, and I'll tell you why. It's not just about the top six. It's about the future of the program, too. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, think about what we've had to endure the last couple of years with the complete roster turnover 2 years in a row. Now, one of them was because of a coaching change. That happens. But then everybody left last year. There was a lot of issues that went into it, but obviously there was a lack of confidence from these guys in coming back. And, once a couple of guys leave, they all leave, that kind of thing. So, I mean, Iona's going to do everything in their power. The plan for roster next year is retention. That is the initial plan. They're going to do everything they can to keep Day Reeves, who has another year of eligibility thanks to the JUCO rule that changed. We're going to do everything we can to keep Adam Jai. We're going to, and then Mundi and player and Jungers. I mean, these guys are starters and they're young guys. I mean, if you can keep those five guys, Menard, a couple other guys certainly are more role players, but if you keep them, you have guys who know your system. That's a big difference. So the plan has always been retention, to retain players and not watch the entire roster leave after this year. And a good way to help make that happen is to finish pretty well. And you can't flounder now these next 5 games, because then there are going to be question marks. But from the players, forget the fans. Fans don't have anything to do with this. This is about the players. So the players might be wondering, geez, what are we doing here? Do we really just, fall apart like that? But if you finish pretty strong and then you go out and, you don't have to win the MAC tournament, but if you perform well in AC, there's confidence. And then, of course, you have to lock in these guys. And if you lock in Day and you lock in Adam, then some of these other guys are going to say, well, if you kept those guys, we're building something and I want to stay for it. And, you feel good about it. And, of course, the money has to be there for NIL and all that. And my understanding is there's a plan for that too. So that's all good to hear. But again, I can't even stress enough how much the retention is. Look at the 3 teams that are clearly ahead of everybody in the MAC right now. It's Quinnipiac, Marist, and Merrimack. All 3 of those teams retained a substantial number of players from last year. And again, Merrimack even made a jump in league and still was able to do what they've done so far this year. Retaining players is vital. So you need to keep 4, 5, 6 of these key guys. And see what happens next year. And then you add from the portal, and we already have a great recruit coming in, Gavin Hightower, and then there's another commitment that is coming very soon. I was hoping you were going to have it for this podcast, but it's coming very soon. Probably the minute I hit send on the podcast, it'll happen. But so an impact player, and then of course again the portal opens up, and we'll see what happens then. So. You have to keep players. So, and that, again, that all feeds. So I'm not going to be so dramatic and say the future of the program rests on the next 5 games, but they're going to be pretty important. So again, 3-2, again, get you that top 6. You get into that top 6 and you have a shot in this league. We've already proven we can play with everybody in this league. So, I know we didn't prove it against Manhattan, but Manhattan's 8-6 for a reason. They're not great. They're young. The freshmen are still freshmen, and they have the best freshman in the league. Sorry to Siena fans who think Gavin Doty is, but Sidnor is better. Period. And he's a freshman. How is he going to respond on the big stage in Atlantic City and all that? So you don't know any of that yet. We have games. We have work to do. We know we have work to do. And again, we hold our own destiny here. Teams are ahead of us. Mamaroneck and Manhattan are ahead of us right now in the standings. Sacred Heart is a half game behind us. So we have games against those 3, and then road game all at home, and then road games against 2 teams at the bottom of the standings. So it's there for us. The question is, can we take it? So before I wrap it up here, I want to just share the press conference from very short one-man press conference. It was basically Tobin and I yesterday after the Quinnipiac game. Again, it wasn't a bad performance by any means. Yafet would have certainly helped the cause and maybe had been enough to get us over the top. We certainly didn't play great basketball, but we played pretty darn well. And again, I think Quinnipiac got a couple calls that helped them down the stretch. Or maybe, that game goes on a bit. So, again, nothing to hang our heads about in yesterday's game. I mean, Quinnipiac is, in my opinion, the most talented team in the league. They're not coached super well, I don't think. But they are 12-3 in the MAC. I mean, it's what it is. They're 16-10. They haven't had a bad year by any means. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what they can do. Or maybe it's their year in AC. Who knows? So, anyway, let's hear what Tobin had to say after the Quinnipiac game yesterday.
Yep. Good game. Good game both ways. I thought Quinnipiac played really well. I thought they made more winning plays than we did. We made some runs, and they got some loose balls, and they got some big hustle plays that we didn't get. We got to be a little bit grittier, tougher. I thought for a team like that, a veteran team that's won championships, they made a lot of the extra plays that had to be made, like rebounding stuff and loose balls and things like that we didn't do, and that cost us.
This is one of the worst games to not have Yvette play for you today.
I mean, injuries are all part of that's an illness. We've been lucky, guy. We haven't had a lot of injuries or stuff. You remember both JB and Yvette, but everybody's got injuries. Everybody's got sick. That's just part of college basketball, right? So you guys got to step up. That's part of what you need throughout the course of a 30-game season, right? So. I thought Jacob came in and gave us good minutes, which was good for him, get some experience there. But it stinks not having it. Listen, if we go out the next month or so, other guys will be out. They'll get sick. It's just going to happen. We have to deal with it. And we had enough to win today. We just didn't get. It's like a play here, play there, goes both ways. We couldn't get stops down the stretch, and that really hurt us. I mean, I'm not sure what they scored down the last 10 possessions, but I'll bet they scored 8 or 9 in the last 10. That just can't happen. We did a lot of good things. I mean, my positive with the guys is I thought Christian Winmore had a good day, which we needed him to be good. I thought Bundy was better today than he has been, and then Comey was better than he has been. If those three guys can help us, it gives us depth, and it makes us a harder team to play against.
How do you get over the top in these close games that just keep get away in the last couple minutes?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're two totally different games, right? Like the Friday night game, we had control of that game, and literally didn't do what we had to do to win the game. Today was going to be back and forth. The Quinnipiac's not going away. I mean, we got by 5, but there's no. They're too good of an offensive team, right? I mean, they got a lot of guys that can score with Monroe and Doug Young and Zimmerman and Otieno and Lewis. They got a lot of guys that can score. So they're not going away. We knew it'd be back and forth. We just didn't get the defensive stops down the stretch or get the loose balls, or we also got it by 5 and try to put a young team try to throw some, or I shouldn't say young, an inexperienced team. Trying to put the dagger in them with 15 minutes to go, as opposed to getting a better shot. We took a lot of threes that I wish had been a little more. We hit something too today, which is good. But I thought at a certain point you get better twos and get to the basket and shoot layups. But it was a good game. They're good. Quinnipiac's really good, and a frustrating weekend obviously. And we all know when you don't take care of business at home. Then it's like this game becomes more of we needed this one today. We didn't get it, so we kind of a wasted weekend as far as our success goes, and that's frustrating. So we have to get better this week and get ready for what's going to now is a huge weekend next weekend. That's just what it is, right? I mean, we want to be a factor in this conference. To get to AC, we got to go win 2 next weekend. We got to win on Friday, so we have to great practices and that kind of thing. So definitely a frustrating weekend all around.
So it was close game at the half, and then started second half, they were throwing the ball over the place. Monroe went out. I think he took a shot to the stomach or something.
Yep.
And I thought maybe we would push ahead a little bit, and we just didn't quite make enough shots.
Yeah, the press is bothering them, right? And then sometimes you may not be playing that hard, may not be the best thing for you, but it's the best thing for us, right? And so, I thought we conserved our energy at that point a little bit. We have to learn how not to do that, especially if you have depth, right? So I thought we had them on the ropes a little bit. We're playing well, that we could have cranked up our pressure, cranked up our defense, and got some easy shots, right? And then we just couldn't. Bundy hit a 3 in the corner, missed it, pretty good 3. We had a turnover, and then Justin had a 3 at the top of the key, missed it, and then then they came down and got some easy stuff, and all of a sudden you're back in a tie game. So I wish at that point we could have cranked up our pressure and cranked up our defensive intensity and really try to wear them out that way, because they were tired and they were hurt a little bit and that kind of thing. But that's a good team, and it's a dangerous team because Monroe goes out, but Doug Young's been an Iona killer here the last 2 years. I mean, he really scores. We know it, we prepared for it, we just didn't guard him, And I thought Bennett played well down the stretch, and I thought Zimmerman's is a deadly shooter. So they have a lot of weapons, right? We don't have as many weapons, so we got to be more sound defensively. And if they score, any team scores 9 out of 10 times. I had the same problem on Friday. We couldn't stop Ryder we need to stop right, or we've got to be better defensively.
What's happened? You had that stretch where you guys were playing better defensively, even in the half court, and now it seems to have gotten away again.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Friday at time we defended really well. I mean, listen, when you get up by, we were up by 13 or 14 points and did get to a certain point. Like, you just got to sustain it, right? So it's like, and we haven't had the depth because I think we haven't had guys off the bench play that well, and now we're starting to get that. So now we need more out of our other guys. Like, hey, we've got to max out. We got to empty the tank. We got to play as hard as we can because there is some more depth there defensively. So yeah, we're starting. So there's a lineup out there sometimes that there's a better offensive team, right? With Menard, Jungers out, that's a better offensive team. We're not going to be as great defensively maybe with that personnel, but we can be better than that. It's like maybe you can't be a great defensive team, but you can be a good defensive team. That's got to happen. And part of that is like also didn't like the fact the first half we had I think 11 turnovers. So and we shot the ball a little bit quick. So it's like that gets us back on defense too fast. Like we can't play like Quinnipiac plays. They're too good offensively. So we the 11 turnovers the first half, the quick shots get us back on defense too fast.
Thank you for everyone listening. And hey, don't give up on this team. Show up this weekend and let's see what happens. Let's get a couple of wins and get that ball rolling toward Atlantic City. I'm booked for down there. Are you? Thanks again. Go Gales.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the IonaHoops.com podcast. This podcast is a production of IonaHoops.com and its publisher Guy Filatico. The opinions shared during this podcast are those of Guy Filatico, IonaHoops.com, and any featured guests. This podcast is not affiliated with Iona University Athletics or the university itself. Thank you for supporting IonaHoops.com.